Hello! I was never supposed to be alone with him. That's the first thing I need you to know. It wasn't some setup, some sneaky plan. It was just bad timing, or good timing, depending on how you look at it. It was one of those late August nights, humid with that heavy, waiting to break kind of silence hanging in the air. My best friend Tyler and I had been planning to spend a week at his family's lake cabin before college started. Just us. Relax, swim, play some old Xbox games, relive our childhood a little before life got serious. But then his mom called. Grandma had a fall. Nothing critical, but enough to send the whole family packing back to the city. Except me. We were already halfway through the trip, and I didn't have anywhere urgent to be. Tyler's older brother, Mason, was due to arrive the next day anyway. He'd just gotten back from a 6-month work stint out in Utah, some engineering internship or something. The plan was simple. I'd stay the night alone, and Mason would be there by morning. Only Mason showed up early. I was in the living room, sprawled across the couch in a pair of shorts and nothing else, watching some mindless show I wasn't even really paying attention to, when the screen door creaked open. I sat up, heart stuttering in my chest. Then I heard it. His voice, low, amused. Didn't expect to find someone here half naked in my cabin. I knew it was Mason before I even turned around. I hadn't seen him in over a year, but his voice had this unbothered calm to it that stuck in your memory. I stood up fast, scrambling for my t-shirt. Shit, Mason. I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow. He dropped his duffel by the door, his dark hair a little longer than I remembered, jaw dusted with stubble, and eyes locked on mine in a way that made my skin heat. Change of plans, he said, voice light. Guess I'm crashing the solo party. We stood there for a beat, just looking at each other. I hadn't had a crush on Mason, exactly. He'd always felt off limits. Too old, too cool, too straight. But in that moment, standing there in the glow of the TV, I couldn't ignore the tiny spark in my gut. I made myself smile. Beer's in the fridge. He helped himself to a beer without another word. I stood awkwardly by the couch, unsure what to do with my hands, my posture, hell, my whole body. He was barefoot, in joggers, and a worn black tank top that clung to his chest in ways I shouldn't have noticed. But I did. Every detail, the way his back moved as he bent to grab a bottle opener, the casual stretch of his arms as he leaned against the counter. You good? He asked suddenly, turning to face me. Yeah, just wasn't expecting company, he smirked. Don't worry, I'm not here to mess up your alone time. You want me to take the guest room or… No, it's fine, I said quickly. I was just crashing on the couch. Take whatever you want. His eyebrow lifted, just a bit. Generous. There was a pause, one of those loaded silences where you both know there's something else under the surface, but neither of you's brave enough to dig it up. You eat? He asked eventually. Not really. He nodded, then went over to the pantry like he'd lived here yesterday, even though it had been months. There's pasta, you cool with that? And so we cooked. Together. Mason handed me a knife to chop garlic like it was the most normal thing in the world. The kitchen filled with the scent of simmering tomato sauce, the kind of homey, slow-cooked smell that made the whole cabin feel smaller, warmer. We ate at the tiny kitchen table, elbows nearly brushing, trading stories about school, work, life. His laugh was lower than I remembered, more groans somehow. After dinner, he suggested we take the little fishing boat out on the lake. Just for a bit, he said. The stars are better from the water. We drifted in silence at first, both of us leaning back against the sides of the boat. I watched his silhouette under the moonlight, the shape of his jaw, the relaxed sprawl of his limbs. I should have looked away, but I didn't. You ever wonder, he said quietly, what it'd be like if things were different? I blinked. Different how? He turned his head, and even in the darkness, I could feel his eyes on me. If you could just be someone else for a night, or do something you normally wouldn't. That sentence sat between us like a spark waiting for a match. I think about it all the time, I said, more honest than I meant to be. He nodded slowly. Me too. We didn't say anything else until we got back, but the tension wasn't gone. It had just slipped under our skin. Later, after we'd built a small fire in the pit outside and finished another beer, he looked at me across the flames. You're not like the kids Tyler brings around. My throat tightened. No. You don't try so hard to prove something. I laughed, a little too dry. Probably because I don't know what I'm trying to prove. He stared at me a moment longer, then looked away. Maybe that's the problem. We didn't talk much after that. He tossed another log into the fire, and we sat in the orange flicker of it until the flames died down, and the only thing left was the quiet buzz in the air between us. I thought he might say something else. Maybe ask me if I knew what he was talking about. But he didn't. He just stood up, stretched, and said, I'm heading in. You coming? I followed him inside, my pulse doing that weird thing where it felt too loud, too fast, like I'd had one too many drinks, except I was completely sober. Inside, Mason flopped onto the couch like he owned it. I stood in the middle of the living room for a second, unsure what to do. He looked up. You want to play? I blinked. Play what? Something dumb. I don't know. We used to play cards out here when I was younger. You got anything? I grabbed the deck from the drawer under the TV, the same one Tyler and I had used for drinking games a dozen times. When I sat across from him on the floor, our knees almost touched. Let's keep it simple, he said, shuffling the cards. War. Loser answers a question. A question? He shrugged. Nothing wild, just talking. So we played. He won the first round. What's the worst date you've ever been on? I laughed. This girl in high school tried to convince me to convert to her church during appetizers. He raised an eyebrow. That bad? I mean, the fries were decent. Next round, I won. You ever been in love? Mason didn't answer right away. He looked down at the cards, his mouth twitching, like he was about to say no, but thought better of it. Once, he said finally. Didn't end well. And so it went. Question after question. Favorite movie? Worst kiss? The one thing you'd change about yourself? The kind of game that started out dumb but got real fast. Then he lost another round, and I asked, what's something you've never told anyone? His fingers tightened slightly on the cards. I think I've spent most of my life pretending to be a different version of myself, he said, eyes not leaving mine. I felt my stomach dip. What do you mean? He looked at me, really looked at me. I mean, I've always done the right thing, the expected thing, and maybe that's not who I actually am. I couldn't breathe, not well. I tried to play it off, to laugh it away, but the look on his face stopped me cold. He wasn't joking. Mason stood, suddenly restless. I'm gonna shower. He left the room without another word, and I sat there on the floor, the cards scattered around me like something broken. My hands were shaking, just a little. When he came back out, hair damp, wearing only a towel around his waist, I forgot how to speak. He looked unbothered, like nothing had happened. But there was something in his eyes when he glanced at me. Something new. He disappeared into the guest room without saying goodnight, and I didn't sleep at all. The next morning was quiet in that heavy way, where even footsteps feel like they echo too loud. I'd crashed back on the couch with a pillow over my head, pretending to sleep, but I'd been wide awake since before the sun came up. My brain wouldn't stop replaying Mason's words from the night before, over and over, like a song stuck on loop. I'd always done the expected thing, and maybe that's not who I actually am. By the time I heard the kitchen faucet running, I sat up, blinking into the morning light. He was there, shirtless again, in loose pajama pants, pouring coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. Want some? He asked, glancing over his shoulder. Yeah, sure. I followed him into the kitchen, keeping my eyes on the floor, the counter, anything but his bare back. He handed me a mug and leaned against the fridge, sipping his own. "I didn't mean to dump stuff on you last night," he said eventually. "You don't have to, react to it or anything." "I didn't mind," I said quickly. "I mean, it was honest." He nodded, staring into his cup like it had answers. "Most people don't want honesty. They want certainty, clean edges. You think I want that?" He looked at me then, and his face was hard to read. Some mix of curiosity, hesitation, and something deeper, something quieter. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe that's why I said it to you." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped my coffee and let the silence stretch. We spent the morning cleaning up the cabin. Nothing major, just wiping down counters, tossing out old leftovers, airing out the place before Tyler and his family came back. It should have felt normal, but it didn't. Every time we passed each other, there was this quiet awareness, like we were sharing a secret neither of us had spoken aloud. That afternoon, the weather turned. Clouds rolled in, heavy and low, and by 5 o'clock it was raining so hard we had to close every window to keep from soaking the floors. We ended up back in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. A movie played on the screen, something forgettable. I wasn't watching. I don't think he was either. At one point he shifted, turning slightly toward me. "You know," he said, voice low, "I didn't come early on accident." I looked over, pulse suddenly loud in my ears. "What do you mean?" "I knew you'd be here alone. Tyler mentioned it." My mouth went dry. "So, why?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at the screen, jaw tense. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." The room felt suddenly too quiet. The only sound was the soft patter of rain on the roof. My chest tightened, heart thudding so hard it felt like it echoed. "I didn't know what I was doing," he continued, barely above a whisper. "Still don't, but I wanted to see you. Not just in a, hey, you're my little brother's friend kind of way. I wanted to see you." I couldn't speak, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and I wasn't sure what would happen if I did, so I said nothing. But I didn't look away. Neither did he. The thunder started as a low grumble, far off, almost like the house was exhaling. Mason's eyes hadn't left mine. I didn't move. Couldn't. There was something about that moment. The rain, the silence, the barely there electricity between us, that made it feel suspended, like it existed outside of real time. He looked at me like he was waiting for a reason to back off, or maybe just waiting for permission not to. "I shouldn't have said that," he muttered suddenly, looking away. "Why?" My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. "Because you're Tyler's best friend," he said, like that explained everything. "Because I'm older. Because it's complicated." I stared at him. "You think I don't know that?" His jaw flexed. "I just didn't expect it to hit me this hard. You walk around like you don't even know what you do to people." I blinked. "To people?" "To me," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to show up here and make it weird. I didn't want to wait anymore." Something in me cracked at that. My stomach flipped, and I looked down at my hands like they could explain what I was supposed to do with all of this. I wanted him. That much was clear. I'd known it the second he walked in the door. Shirt clinging to his chest, talking to me like I wasn't just his little brother's friend anymore. But I'd spent so long convincing myself that guys like Mason were off limits. Straight. Untouchable. And yet, here he was, telling me he'd been thinking about me, that he showed up early because of me. I looked back up and said the one thing I hadn't let myself say out loud, not even in my head. "I've thought about you too." His whole body stilled. Neither of us moved for a beat. Then he leaned in just slightly, slow enough that I could have stopped him if I wanted. I didn't. His hand brushed against mine on the couch cushion, tentative, testing. And when I didn't pull away, he let his fingers close around mine. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet, but it felt like the moment right before the edge. like standing on a diving board with nowhere to go but forward. Then the front door opened. We both jerked apart so fast it was almost comical. I scrambled upright just as Tyler's voice rang out from the hallway. "Yo, we're back. You guys still alive out here?" I stood up, heart racing, and turned to look at Mason. His face was unreadable now, all the emotion gone, like he'd flipped a switch. He stood too, casually stretching, as Tyler walked in with his mom behind him. "Hey," Mason said, voice easy. "We made pasta." I nodded stiffly, barely managing a smile. Tyler flopped onto the couch between us, completely oblivious. "Sweet, I'm starving." Mason glanced at me once. Just once. His eyes lingering a half-second longer than necessary. And then it was like nothing had happened at all. Dinner was a blur. I don't remember what I said or ate, or even if I ate. Tyler talked non-stop about the drive, about his grandma, about a raccoon they saw on the side of the road. And I nodded, smiled, pretended to listen. Across the table, Mason barely spoke. When our eyes met, it was like there was something trapped behind his. Something he wasn't letting out now that his brother was back between us. It was worse than tension. It was absence, like he'd sealed the part of himself I'd glimpsed earlier back behind a locked door. After dinner, we cleaned up. Mason offered to do the dishes. Tyler and his mom disappeared upstairs to unpack. When I walked into the kitchen to grab water, Mason didn't look up from the sink. "Hey," I said. He nodded. "Hey." I waited, but he didn't say anything else. Just kept scrubbing. "So that's it?" He paused, still not looking at me. "What do you want me to say? That what happened earlier wasn't nothing?" He sighed through his nose, set the plate down, and finally looked at me. "Of course it wasn't nothing." "Then why are you acting like it was?" "Because I don't know what you want from me, man," he said, voice lower now. "This isn't a movie. There's your best friend upstairs. There's everything that could blow up if I touch you again." I stepped closer. "You're not the only one who'd be taking a risk." He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "You sure about this?" "I'm not sure about anything," I admitted. "But I know I don't want to go back to pretending." He studied me for a long moment. Then, with a tiny shake of his head, he whispered, "Your trouble?" "You showed up for me." He looked away, smiling softly to himself like he hadn't meant to. That night, we all watched a movie together. Some dumb comedy Tyler picked. The three of us on the couch, Mason on one end, me on the other, Tyler in the middle, passing popcorn like we were 12 again. But every once in a while, Mason's eyes found mine. And every time, I felt it like a secret handshake no one else could see. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat outside on the porch, listening to the wind rustle through the trees, heart still racing with all the things we hadn't said. The screen door creaked. Mason stepped out, barefoot, hoodie thrown over a t-shirt. He sat next to me without saying anything. We stared out at the lake. The moon was high, silver on the ripples. Then he said, "I don't know how to be this person, but I want to try." I didn't answer with words. I just reached for his hand, slowly, and felt it close around mine. In the stillness, in the dark that said everything, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of footsteps upstairs. The porch moment still felt unreal, like something I dreamed, but when I sat up on the couch and looked across the room, there was Mason, leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling on his phone, same hoodie from last night, same calm face. And when our eyes met, he smiled. Not a big smile, just a little one, but it felt like something shifted. Tyler walked in a second later, still in boxers, rubbing his eyes. "Please tell me someone made food." Mason reached into the fridge. "There's eggs. You're on your own." As they bantered, I stayed quiet, watching the way Mason's eyes flicked toward me every now and then, never too long, but long enough to say, "I see you." After breakfast, Mason pulled me aside while Tyler went to shower. We stood by the side door, half in shadow, half in light. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. You?" He nodded too. "We don't have to label it, but I'm not pretending anymore." My throat felt tight. "Me either." He hesitated, then added, "I want to keep this, whatever this is, if you do." I looked at him, really looked at him. The guy the first used to think was too far out of reach, too straight, too untouchable. Now standing in front of me asking, not assuming. I do. That was it. No grand declarations, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just a simple agreement. Between two people who finally stopped lying to themselves. The rest of the weekend passed in a strange, quiet harmony. Mason didn't make any bold moves in front of Tyler, and I didn't expect him to. But there were moments, small ones, that felt different now. Like when his hand lingered on my shoulder a beat too long. Or the way he looked back at me before leaving the room, like he was saying something we weren't allowed to say out loud. And when it was finally time for me to head back to the city, he followed me out to my car. I was about to get in when he reached for my wrist. "You'll come back up sometime, right?" I smiled. "Only if you're here." His hand dropped, but not before his fingers grazed mine in that way I'd come to recognize. That night, back in my own bed, I stared at the ceiling and let myself replay everything. The cigarette burn on the carpet, the pasta dinner, the look in his eyes by the fire, the hand that found mine on the porch. It wasn't a fantasy. It happened, and it was just the beginning. A month later, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Not the part where Mason looked at me like I wasn't invisible. Not the porch. Not the hand in mine. That was all real. But what followed, how he went back home and I went back to school, it left a weird silence in its wake. We texted, a little, not a lot. Just enough to keep something flickering between us, but nothing serious, nothing defining. And the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I didn't know what he wanted it to be either, so I kept busy, got through the first few weeks of classes, spent my weekends half focused on parties and group projects, pretending like I hadn't left a huge chunk of myself behind at that cabin. Then, on a random Thursday night, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in days. "Mason, you around?" It was already past 9. I'd just finished cleaning up my dinner and was in the middle of brushing my teeth. I stared at the screen for a second, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Me? "Yeah, why?" "Mason, can I come up?" I froze. No explanation, no emoji, just that. My place wasn't far from the highway, technically, but it was still a 3-hour drive from his. He could have meant next week, or maybe he was just messing with me. But 15 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find him standing there, in a black hoodie and jeans, hair messy from the drive, eyes tired but focused. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Neither of us moved at first. Then he lifted a small bag over his shoulder. I didn't really think this through. "You drove 3 hours not thinking it through. More like I couldn't not think about it anymore," he said. "About you." I stepped back to let him in. He dropped his bag by the door, looking around like he wasn't sure what he'd expected. My place wasn't anything special. Small, clean, a few too many half-dead plants and takeout containers. But right then, it felt like it mattered that he saw it, that he saw me. He sat on the edge of my couch and looked up at me like he was waiting for a sign. "You said he didn't want to pretend anymore," I said softly. "I don't," he said. "I meant that. But it doesn't mean I know how to do this. Be this." I sat beside him, close, but not touching. "You don't have to know everything yet," I said. "Just don't disappear." His shoulder brushed mine, almost tentative. I didn't mean to, I just got scared. So did I. We sat there in the dim light of my living room, neither of us rushing the silence. After a while, I leaned my head against his shoulder. It felt steady, like the right kind of gravity. "I don't want this to be some secret," I said quietly. "It's not," he replied. "Not to me." He reached for my hand, just like he had on the porch. But this time, he didn't let go. Not after a second. Not after an hour. We stayed like that until the rain started again, soft against the windows, the same way it had that night. Only this time there was no pretending. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.